This is also a special Sunday for another reason, and that is that this is the final musical Sunday that Gregory Hayes will present before he retires this June. We are very grateful to family members and friends of the Shelley family, music lover Karen Shelley, who died in 2011, and they have been providing funding for a musical Sunday in her honor and memory since 2012. So we're very glad also to welcome all these musicians. And we will now begin our service.
Today's opening words are a poem by Karen Shelley, whose family is here with us and has helped to fund these musical Sundays. Oh, I did forget something. This must be the early crack in the vase that makes everything perfect. No, you know why? Because the opening words are
it's
before.
mixed up. Oh, that's right. Okay, I'm wrong.
Okay. We're both somehow wrong. So anyway, we're going to go back to our opening words while Janet is on standby. Karen was a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, a lover of music and so much more, a member of this society for many years, and a very gifted writer. The opening words are from a poem of hers called Church, or are the poem called Church. It's not the Tiffany windows. It's not the great hall with its ornate plaster and rugs. It's not the pulpit and the sound system that grab me. It's the pause of infinity while the chalice is lighted, the power in the music. It's the unexpected treasures like Moonbeam singing gospel. It's singing the same tune twice over every Sunday, as if the roof would fall in if we didn't. and looking around to see the faces of people I know and people I don't know, all of whom choose to be here. Please rise in body or spirit while we read together the words for our chalice lighting. To worship is to stand in awe under a heaven of stars, before a flower, a leaf in sunlight, or a grain of sand. To worship is to work with dedication and with skill. It is to pause and listen to a strain of music. I'd like to invite the young people to come forward for a brief meet and greet with today's musicians. As you can see, there's a lot going on here in the place where you regularly meet and hear a story. So I'd like to invite you to come over where Greg is in the purple tie and cluster around and get to know some of our musicians. Don't be shy. Or be shy and come up anyway.
You can have a seat. It's pretty clean. Good morning. In place of the usual children's story, it struck me that with all these wonderful colleagues and friends here, it would be fun just to talk a little bit about what we do and why we do it. I also commend to your attention the one-sentence bios on the adjoining sheet. I asked people specifically not to say the usual facts and data, but something else that they thought you might like to know about. Instead of having 12 of us speak for about an hour and a half, I've asked 3 of us just to talk for about a minute each about what they do. So first come the horns, Jean and Chris.
Did you know that you can make a sound by blowing on the stalk of a zucchini leaf? Or that you can make a whistle out of a willow branch? Or that you could string a rubber band between 2 drawer knobs and pluck on it like an instrument? There are so many ways to make music, and we're horn players, and we love the horn, but we also love just to make really beautiful sounds on things. So this is what this garden hose I've fashioned to look like a horn. I'm going to play this for you, and let's see if I can get a bunch of notes. And now I'm going to play a little bit of Handel, the one who's written the music we're playing today, and see if Chris helps me on her modern horn, if I can play the garden hose part with her.
So remember that. That's what Jean does. She plays the garden hose. Next is Fred Cohen, who plays the oboe.
Hi, that's a very hard act to follow. I play the oboe, and the oboe, I have to make a very funny sound to play the oboe. It sounds sort of really beautiful, like this. Can you talk into the microphone? Well, I could. Is that better? I play the oboe. So in order for me to make a sound, I have to use this tiny little thing here. It's called a reed, and it makes a beautiful sound. Close your eyes and see if you can imagine what the sound is. Isn't that nice? But then, can you hold that? Go ahead. You can't say what you're thinking. This is church. But if I put my reed in the oboe, it sounds like this. I hope. See, thank you very much.
And last, I asked Wayne just to say a couple of words or play.
Hi, I'm Wayne. I play cello, a very serious instrument. No, actually, I love it because it's just such a beautiful sound, and it also makes lots of interesting sounds. I'll give you some examples. So when you pluck it, but it also has a really nice singing sound. Also makes them pretty cool. So that's why I'm here.
So that's what we do, and as you can see, we all enjoy it a lot.
So, while we get ready to sing together, Rising in Body or Spirit, hymn number 209, the children and others will go back to their seats, their families, their spots. Okay. Also, we need to stall a little bit. Oh, you're up there already. Awesome. Okay. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing. please remain seating or standing. The elusive quest for perfection continues. Please greet those you know and offer a warm welcome to those you don't know. Our morning offering will now be given and very gratefully received. Children and others going downstairs, it's time for you to leave for your classes. We will sing you out. So much delight and joy, it's hard to leave. Our meditation this morning is a poem by Karen Shelley titled Ralph and His Oversoul. Not sure I have a soul. Certainly not as an appendage like my liver or gallbladder. Certainly not something totally outside me, a place, person, or thing. Perhaps in the interstices between the atoms in the cells of my body, something beams, something glows, perhaps light from the stars. Let us be silent together for a few moments.
Good morning. There was a long article by Rachel Aviv in the February 5th issue of The New Yorker. It told the story of a 13-year-old African-American woman who was declared brain dead in 2014 following a botched operation to remove her tonsils. Her family refused to have her taken off a ventilator. With the help of a lawyer, the family had their daughter or sister or granddaughter removed from the hospital and flown to New Jersey, one of two states where the concept of brain death can be rejected on religious grounds. The girl survives. Those who attend to her care are convinced that she does, in fact, exhibit subtle responses to some stimuli. The article raises numerous troubling issues, from racism to the clinical definitions of life and death. A central figure in the account is a highly regarded neurologist, Dr. Alan Schumann, whose own attitude about what constitutes brain death has evolved. A colleague calls him the most intellectually honest person I have ever met. One paragraph in the article recounts the moment Dr. Schumann decided to pursue what has become his life's work. When Dr. Schumann was a college sophomore at Harvard, he listened to Chopin's Trois Nouvelles Etudes No. 2 in his dorm room. And the music lifted him into such a state of ecstasy that he had an epiphany. He no longer thought it possible that all conscious experience, particularly one's perception of beauty, could be a mere electrophysiological epiphenomenon, he said. The music seemed to transcend the spatial limitations of matter. At that time, an atheist, he converted to Catholicism and studied Aristotelian Thomistic philosophy. He went to medical school in 1971 and then specialized in neurology because he wanted to understand the relationship between the mind and the brain.
We have three more brief readings. The first comes from an interview with the late Austrian conductor Nikolaus Harnoncourt. To me, music is one of the most important expressions of human art. It's a language, and it's a necessary language, because it covers a part of communication which cannot be covered by word and verbal language. With the latter, you cannot say two or three things which contradict each other at the same time. But with music, you can do that. To be a musician is to live with a good deal of your personality in that language. The second reading on the nature of beauty comes from the book On Beauty and Being Just by Harvard professor Elaine Scarry. Many human desires are coterminous with their object. A person desires a good meal, and, as though by magic, the person's desire for a good meal seems to end at just about the time the good meal ends. But our desire for beauty is likely to outlast its object, because, as Kant once observed, unlike all other pleasures, the pleasure we take in beauty is inexhaustible. No matter how long beautiful things endure, they cannot out-endure our longing for them. If the beauty of an object lasts exactly as long as the life of the object, the way the blue chalice of a morning glory blossoms, spins open at dawn, and collapses at noon, it will not be faulted for the disappearance of its beauty. Our final reading comes from the distinguished American choral conductor, composer, and arranger, Smith alum, and local resident, Alice Parker, who, at age 92, still lives on her family farm in Hawley. She writes, "Time, we're in it and out of it at the same moment. Think of me trying to keep my balance on that core, that now, dug deep into a whirling globe, at the mercy of both time and space. Thank goodness for music, which shapes time into beauty."
Good morning. My introduction to this service for many years now has been pretty much the same, with only the year number changing. I say, if you're new to the society, today's exercise might be a bit mysterious. It is part of a tradition here that goes back at least 35 years, and maybe much longer, of an occasional larger musical presentation in place of a sermon. The premise is that music making, among its many roles in today's culture, can still be a spiritual exercise in itself. I know of no other Sunday morning institutions that devote their time once or twice a year to exercises such as this. There are, I hear, choir Sundays and Sundays occasionally devoted to bigger musical presentations, but these often have specific connections to a liturgy or the church calendar. Here, such events are, so to speak, freestanding. And what's the point? How did we get here? As Marty Nathan, among many, has pointed out in her wonderful sermon last August from this pulpit, this being the third of her rules to live by for a life well lived, we search for, long for, and desire to make beauty. And over the years, this service has usually focused on sounds that are coherent, sounds that somehow seem to express or reflect some part of the human condition, and sounds that might be considered beautiful. And this, as you just heard, is how Alice Parker refers to music, the shaping of time into beauty. So what, after all, is beauty? The dictionary tells us that it is the quality or aggregate of qualities in a person or thing that gives pleasure to the senses or pleasurably exalts the mind or spirit. What those qualities might be is the stuff of 1,000 books beyond Elaine Scarry's. Let's talk instead here of how the perception of beauty can affect one's outlook and even alter the path of one's life, as it did for Dr. Schumann. I can't tell you what switch that Chopin etude flipped in his brain or why. Of course, maybe he can, since he's a neurologist. I didn't know this etude and only looked it up after reading Rachel Aviv's article. It's not my favorite Chopin ever, yet, at least. Why did he decide that this modest piece transcended the spatial limitation of matter? The legendary pianist and Chopin specialist Arthur Rubinstein once declared that Chopin's music goes straight to the heart. The first edition, about 1880, of an important reference work, Grove's Dictionary of Music and Musicians, includes this lovely passage in its entry on Chopin. Thought and form, matter and manner, shades of emotion and shades of style blend perfectly. Like a magician, he appears possessed of the secret to transmute and transfigure whatever he touches into some weird crystal, convincing in its conformation, transparent in its eccentricity, of which no duplicate is possible, no imitation desirable. Like a magician. If you were here at this time last week, you heard Janet Bush discuss magic and miracles. In an interview shortly before he died last year, at the same age I am, the rocker Tom Petty of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers said this: "Music is probably the only real magic I have encountered in my life. There's not some trick involved with it. It's pure and it's real. It moves, it heals, it communicates, and does these incredible things." He's right, and he's probably not talking about Chopin and Handel here. It really doesn't matter. For a BBC program, the revered physicist Stephen Hawking, who died last month, listed the recordings he would want to have with him on a desert island. The first was Poulenc's Gloria. The second was Brahms's Violin Concerto, and the third was Beethoven's String Quartet, Opus 132. But a little further down the list was the Beatles' Please Please Me. I just don't understand that choice. There's many, many good Beatles songs. If you are of a certain age and grew up as I did, under the spell of pop music, you know what influenced you, perhaps powerfully. Maybe it was the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or Smokey Robinson or the Supremes or Joni Mitchell or Queen or the Talking Heads or somebody else. Much of their music reminds us, but then so does Handel's, of what the British psychiatrist and author Anthony Storrs, among many, has pointed out. Music may have a more direct, profound, and immediate effect on us than the other arts. Storrs writes, "I can well believe that some people find that their hearts beat faster when they look at a beautiful picture, building, or sunset. But I doubt if they experience the urge towards physical motion and the musical responses to rhythm which music induces. Pictures seldom make one want to dance." In other words, music does indeed move us in so many ways. And as we play the dance-inspired movements from Handel's Water Music, the stately minuet and the brisk triple-time allegro and hornpipe and passepied, if you want to move around a bit, please go ahead. It's great stuff. As one critic has noted, let it merely be said that for sheer entertainment and joy, the music that Handel composed for the king's pleasure on that summer evening has few rivals in the whole literature. And if that description is a little bit mysterious, you should read the program note, because it talks about that and also the relation of the piece to Karen Shelley. As you know, my professional life, as that of my wonderful colleagues here, is in the realm of classical, or what I prefer to call art music, and its place in our culture is not in the ascendance. We're born with a sense of balance, which gets more acute and reliable as we grow up, and then fades a little bit as we get older. We're not born knowing how to play a violin or an oboe, or how to shape an exquisite musical phrase, or for that matter, how to perceive, understand, and convey the magic contained in the great works of our Western heritage. This takes time, of which we seem to have ever less. We also suffer now from what seems to be a universal malady, our short little span of attention, as the American poet Paul Simon calls it. And now you're thinking, it's Call Me Al, and it's Graceland, and it's 1986. In the words of the equally great American author and musician David Byrne, how do we work this? It's a matter of balance. My fervent hope going forward is that our culture comes to its senses, that we actively work for justice, climate action, and equal opportunity and treatment under the law for all, but that we also reserve time individually and as a society to find our humanity, as the lawn sign in Florence still says, in the arts, in the past, as in our collective future, and in one another. And in conclusion, both to my remarks here and to this long and invigorating run of musical Sundays, I can do no better than to read from the final page of Anthony Storr's book. It's called Music and the Mind. It's a rather tough and academic read, but he closes by speaking simply from the heart as a lover of music. He says, "Music exalts life, enhances life, and gives it meaning. Great music outlives the individual who created it. It is both personal and beyond the personal. For those who love it, it remains as a fixed point of reference in an unpredictable world. Music is a source of reconciliation, exhilaration, and hope which never fails. Music has incomparably enriched my life. It is an irreplaceable, undeserved, transcendental blessing." Amen.
Our final hymn is hymn number 326, Let All the Beauty We Have Known. Please rise, embody your spirit, and raise your voices in song.
Our closing words come from the eminent Catalan cellist Pablo Casals. Writing a few years before his death at age 97, he recounted his daily practice routine. It is not a mechanical routine, but something essential to my daily life. I go to the piano, and I play 2 preludes and fugues of Bach. I cannot think of doing otherwise. It is sort of a benediction on the house. But that's not its only meaning for me. It is a rediscovery of the world of which I have the joy of being a part. It fills me with awareness of the wonder of life, with a feeling of the incredible marvel of being a human being. Go in peace.
Thank you.